Hello, and welcome to another edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes, where I like to say you get personal insights from a therapist directly in your car or in your home. So being aware this is not the delivery of therapy services in any way, but you get to see the world through the lens of a therapist, which, I don't know, is that scary or cool, Adam?
Sounds cool to me.
Sounds cool.
Sure.
Through the eyes of a therapist. Got the show out, the book out, the show's out. We got a lot of shows out. Actually, that's probably something to kind of highlight. We started putting a couple shows out a week. This one's coming out. We probably still have that format going. We haven't changed anything about our format. It's just been. Well, go ahead. Neil's got the mic.
After we're done with these random shows, I think we need to have a show on procrastination.
Maybe so.
So you can show me, help me learn to not procrastinate. So there was no format change. It's just I got behind.
He owns it.
Wasn't that
you know
episode-
what? In your honor, we will do a show on procrastination. I make that pledge.
We'll get to it later. Right?
Wasn't that episode
Later
25 though
sometime.
already? No,
Maybe so.
I'm joking.
So thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. It definitely helps us to take ownership of the Through a Therapist's Eyes community. So 5-star reviews are very important. Apple iTunes and helping us out by making actual comments and review on that. That is really make a big difference in the algorithm. So please help us out, grow the show. If you take a little bit of ownership, we can all do that together. So this is the human emotional experience, and we do endeavor to figure this out together. So off we go with this idea. Adam, you're back with us for the last time this month, I guess, and then we'll be transitioning on. So welcome back from Mexico. He was in a whole nother country, I guess, recently, huh?
Yeah, I was looking to see if I could do something, but I can't, so.
Oh, with the live?
Yeah, that's right. We'll do it later.
We had him distracted.
Yeah, I'm distracted.
Welcome back to the States, my friend. Did everything go okay?
Yep. Everything went fine.
Yeah, welcome back.
Some hiccups, but we're good.
So as we started talking about when the live kicked off, which just remember on the show, we do a YouTube channel as well, and we do a Facebook Live, and you can actually see us that way. And I just think that people can understand it because this is the audio-only version on the podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. That's what everyone says anymore, isn't it? These funny social media phrases that we've developed. Love, thoughts of prayers, and all these others. I don't know.
You never know. You may be being broadcast on some network that you're not aware of.
That would be cool, but it better not happen. You need to talk to our promotional guy, Neil, over there. Anyway, so all right, listen. So this is an interesting topic, I think. The title here: "Stop Numbing and Start Living." So, I had some weirdness interacting with you before we started recording the show.
You're like, not yet.
Yeah, and what I meant by that is so I think about these types of phrases just in my own personal life, with my friends or just non-clinical people as you are, and family and whatever, and you start talking about emotional healing. I don't even know what some of these phrases are, but living, being emotionally free, like these are phrases that make total sense to me given what I do, but I recognize from a non-clinical perspective, I just wonder how people hear those types of things. And here's an example. When I was a young clinician, very, very early on in my career, I remember somebody actively saying, blah, 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 come to this agency, whatever, and it was talk, and the phrase was, let the healing begin. And I, as a clinician, young as it may be, green and not knowing much, but I thought, that's a weird phrase, let the healing begin. How do we say these things? And so this seems almost sort of in that vein to me. So that's the way I'm trying to set up. What did you think about the title, Stop Numbing and Start Living?
Well, the start living part is kind of, self-explanatory. The stop numbing thing is the thing I was wondering how you're going to go about this. What exactly you had to talk about?
Holy cow, that's actually opposite that
really?
I was thinking. Yeah.
Really? Well, yeah. I mean, start living, I think, this is your life. You only got one to make the best of it. That's what I'm thinking. But to stop numbing, really don't know what you mean.
Okay, that's so cool because I see where you came up with the start living component because people do maybe talk about that in normal non-clinical talk, I guess, and make it your best life. I don't know. How did you just put it?
You got one life, make the best of it.
One life, yeah. That type of thing. Yeah, it actually means different to me. What do we mean by living? There's some different pieces to that. But the stop numbing is the easy part to me. The emotional skills that we use. The negative coping mechanisms. I mean, if you think
like stop being numb to this, stop being numb to that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. We have pain, we have emotional pain, and we'll just numb out of it. We won't want to experience that. And so we'll do the negative coping mechanisms to not feel the emotion, right? That to me is the easy part, but the start living part I thought was possibly weird. And it's not weird, but it is different than the cultural. I see where you took
It's like
that.
a 9 Inch Nails song.
Is it a 9 Inch Nails song?
Johnny Cash did it too.
Comfortably numb, yeah.
No.
Well, that's not 9 Inch Nails. That's
not
Metallica. But am I wrong?
No.
That's Metallica, right? Yeah, comfortably numb. Come on, you're the music guy.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about 9 Inch Nails right now, and you totally got me off. I'll think about hurt myself today to see if I still feel. Johnny Cash did that too.
I've not.
It's a 9 Inch Nails song, and he got permission. Johnny Cash got permission from 9 Inch Nails, from Trent Reznor to.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought Johnny Cash was back in the day, and 9 Inch
he
Nails
was, and he did a remake of a 9 Inch Nails song, and it was awesome.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. How old is he? When was this?
Been a long time ago.
Okay. Well, we do have a lot of songs about being numb, and I guess one of the points I'll put out right off the get-go, when you're listening to this and realizing, stop numbing, one of Casey really likes to drive this point home on the show, and she's totally right. I guess I always knew it, but I never really highlighted it like she does. When you have uncomfortable emotions or things that you've been through that you don't want to think about, you just kind of don't want to feel anymore, people will try to just forget and then numb things out is the way that you express it. But when you try to shut all that down, there's a big problem with that. And people will live a long time being or trying to be numb. And the reality of it is you can only numb all emotions. You cannot just numb the negative things that you don't want to experience anymore. You will also numb out the joy, and you'll numb out, loving somebody. You'll shut it all down or none of it down. This is very few rare instance where it's really kind of an all or nothing deal. There's no way to just numb out selective life experiences or selective emotions that you have tied to something. The only way that I could think of that happens is psychological repression, where you actually forget trauma that happened to you. But that's the subconscious doing something crazy that we don't have the ability to do in the.
Like putting that little thing in the box, put it in your attic, and not bring it up again.
It's gone. But you cannot really numb out emotionally from those things that you're trying to compartmentalize that way. So that's a big part of why we don't want to numb out. But I have an interesting question I wanted to start out with you, much in the same vein of the cultural expression of these things, right? So I have the impression, maybe I'm wrong, but I want to ask you directly, why do people straight up just flat fear emotions and feelings? Right?
Why they straight out what?
Fear it. Avoid it. Feelings and emotions.
Past things that's happened bad?
Even just being emotional. I feel like people are afraid of that. People are straight afraid
I think
of that.
past things that's happened bad, if you've been through some kind of traumatic experience and you're like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not opening myself up to that.
Maybe I'll ask you, are people afraid of emotions in your mind? And then kind of why? You'll hear this expression, people are like, oh, yeah, I don't have emotions, as though that's something, a badge to hang on,
right.
Or I got my cape on my back, it's nothing bothers me. I think that actually comes from a place of fear, right? Or just avoidance, uncomfortability, not wanting to have feelings and emotions. So the question is, do you agree?
I agree, yeah.
You do agree?
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious why. Because as a therapist, it's like I do this all day. Of course, I'm desensitized to it. I don't necessarily I get uncomfortable with my own, don't get me wrong, but, just to deal with an emotional issue with somebody, either in a friendship or something that's going on, or acknowledge the emotion that's people having.
Well, I mean, everybody has an emotion. Even not
Yeah.
having an emotion is an emotion,
It is.
so to speak.
It is.
I mean, I should say not reacting. Not reacting, or reacting that's all depending on emotion. So, I mean, everybody has emotions.
Yeah. Part of the whole through a therapist's eyes is taking the mystery out of all this stuff, taking the fear out of all this stuff, blowing up stereotypes and myths about it. I think that we're much more progressive nowadays in the way of it's okay to be an emotional person. Like, I think we've made great strides with that culturally, at least here in the States. Around the world, I guess I don't really know because there's so many cultures that we're speaking to.
Well, what do you mean? Great strides for
being able to be an emotional person, allowing ourselves to feel, allowing ourselves to be genuine and real with whatever.
To let your emotions be known.
Yes.
So I mean,
to yourself as well as to other people.
I don't know about that because you have emotions. You're going to have the emotions either way.
Yeah.
So we might have great strides on being able to share those emotions or let those emotions be known, but it's not like the people didn't have those emotions before.
Right.
That's what I was getting at.
The human emotional experience hasn't changed in a lot of ways, I feel like.
Right.
So is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even if things have changed around the world, they're still, they've had emotions the whole time. Just they might not be able to share what their emotions are about certain things.
And we've made strides with that.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Before we weren't able to really even share them. I guess to a certain extent, honestly, like we never really knew what a lot of this stuff was. They were just straight up, flat out crazy people. In the Dark Ages or Middle Ages or, 1050 BC, we had schizophrenia. We had these emotional things, but we didn't know about it. So I guess we've learned a lot. Obviously, science has advanced our knowledge of neurotransmitters and brains and various functions of, hormones and chemicals that create the way that we feel. So, I mean, we've made strides scientifically, and maybe we're just, catching up culturally to what we've learned scientifically about it. But I think people are still very fearful about, this whole process. And I don't know, like I said, I want to take some of the fear out of it so that it's not so bad. So let's dig in a little bit. We talked about numbing. Like, what are we talking about when we say stop numbing and start living? And this is good because I think that you said that's more complicated to stop numbing. And I thought that was the easier part. So, you know how I've talked about self-care being the cornerstone of mental health, right?
Yep.
Heard that. Mm-hmm. So fun, relaxing, enjoyable activities that aren't self-destructive in any way. We'll numb out with those. We don't want those. But self-care is also not work-related tasks because we'll work ourselves to death. So that's another way of numbing out. The destructive things or working ourselves to death. Self-care can actually also, as positive as it is, and as much as the cornerstone of mental health that it can be, we can also really use that destructively, right? To get compulsively into
working
Netflix
out
binging.
Or something.
Huh?
Like being compulsive about working out constantly or
right?
whatever.
Any of
Or
the
video
activities
games
that we enjoy.
constantly,
Yes. Yes. I mean, listen, I love a good Netflix binge. I'm not picking on that. It's wonderful. But when we're avoiding things and doing things that even aren't destructive, that compulsivity to it, can really create disruption in you being aware of ourselves, right? Being able to be in tune with what we're experiencing or feeling kind of at any given point. So that's part of how we can numb. But interestingly enough, I got to thinking about this too, so I'm glad I did this because it gives an answer to you and probably many people thinking, what the hell does it mean to be numbed out? Think about how we will cut conversations short, right? Or we'll give limited answers. When people ask us tough questions, maybe your spouse does, and maybe more the engulfment person, the abandonment, but they'll just give very simple, small answers and want to, get out of this as quickly as possible.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
This is all sort of numbing behaviors. Changing the topics, it's kind of like, okay, well, we've got that covered. Let's move on to something else. Or having a strong reticence to revisit. a topic that we just, this happened last night. Some people were like, well, that was yesterday. Somebody literally said that to me in a counseling session today, in a couples counseling session. Well, that was last week. We don't need to do that. Just, me and the lady laughed because she's in the abandonment role, right? So there's all of these little ways that, when we begin to feel, we'll begin to employ all of these short circuits or end arounds or cutoffs or straight up destructive coping mechanisms or self-care gone compulsive or working ourselves to death, right? Like, this is why I said I think people are fearful of emotion and want to numb it out. Is that making totally better sense?
Yep.
I think this happens all the time. I know I've done it when I'm just wore out or don't want to be emotional. We have these skills that we've built up that can be so bad.
Don't want to fight. I'm not going to talk about it. Stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Conflict avoidant conversation or communication patterns. It's like, I just don't want to have a problem. How many people avoid politics now? I used to have the ability of having conversation about politics with my buddies and stuff, and now it's like, my brother's like, dude, I don't talk to anybody about this anymore. I'm like, wow.
Because you're going to make somebody mad no matter what.
Yeah. People can't handle what they feel with stuff, and there's intense feelings about it. Just gets avoided.
Tell you something I avoid.
Huh?
I'll tell you something I avoid. When somebody comes up to me and they have like some kind of outlandish opinion about something.
Right.
And you have to, sit there for a minute. I avoid shaking my head yes.
Really?
Yep. You have to do that.
Why? It's an interesting idiosyncrasy, but a perfect example of what I'm talking about with like daily living. So
if you're shaking your head yes and the person's talking to you, what is that person reading from you?
I guess you're agreeing.
Right.
Is there a difference between a head nod like that? Or?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying I avoid doing that because I don't want them to think that I'm agreeing with them.
Yeah.
Because I've been in a situation before where someone has some kind of outlandish opinion about something, and you're listening to them, and you're like, yeah, I know. Then that person goes, oh, me and Adam were talking, and that happens because you're giving them confirmation that you agree with them. So that's something I avoid.
That's funny. Has the cultural head nod acknowledgement gone away?
Well, just be aware if you're nodding yes, you're telling that other person you agree with them.
You might be. Because that's the funny thing about perception. You don't really know how the other person is taking what you say and what they're filtering emotionally, psychologically, and what they're actually receiving. Because I wouldn't receive that at all. That's why I was confused.
I bet you would.
I don't think that I
bet
would.
You would. Well, you just said you did. I said if you're shaking your head yes, well, you're agreeing with them. So,
well, by intuition, I came to that conclusion. But I think in natural conversation,
it might be subconscious. I really think people, if you're shaking your head while the other person's talking, they're thinking, oh, we're alike. We're thinking the same. We're on the same. Now, I guess you could do that to your advantage too. If you want them to think that you're alike, then shake your head, yes. Oh yeah.
It's just cool. We would need to research that. Honestly, I would love to. I mean, I'm not a studies person. I'd like to receive the studies rather than do the studies, but to get the cultural perception of people with. It used to be a knowledge of, yes, I acknowledge you, a head nod. But we've done all sorts of things. Women probably too. I was going to say particularly men, but that's probably not an accurate statement. We'll non-verbally communicate, I'm done talking, taking a step backwards, or beginning to lose eye contact.
Start doing something else.
Looking down, topic changing. Yeah. All of these things are all of what I'm talking about numbing out or avoiding or just trying to shut down emotion. Like how much of your day operates with all of these little cultural idiosyncrasies, interactional patterns, and straight up strategies to deal with, like, I don't want to be emotional with you, right? It happens a lot. And again, the big part about all of this is when you're doing that, you're numbing out both the positive connections. You want to numb out the negative connections, but you're numbing them. You can't numb only one. You You're shutting both down. And at times that's appropriate. I'm not saying that's never appropriate, but you really got to be aware of how often that's happening. That's happening for you. Let's switch gears to the other side of it. What do I mean by living? We were talking about that a little bit. Think about it. So when you're really living, you're having feelings. I mean, that's just a part of our human emotional experience.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling leads to intuition. It leads to the experiences that you're having. There's a phrase that they say in 12-step circles, living life on life's terms. It's a cool phrase. It means a lot. So when you're talking about living, you're talking about being on life's terms. You're living in life's terms. And that is ups and downs. That's experiencing what's happening. Having a full breadth of these experiences. You're not trying to choose how this conversation you and I are having are going. You're going with it. That's living, right?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the pandemic especially has robbed us of a lot of these experiences that previous we would take for granted. I think a lot of the kids in schools, developmentally, we've talked about it on other episodes before you were here, but I mean, they've been rocked.
Yeah, it's messed up.
They have been just rocked and robbed of basic life experiences like going to the prom. I look at my kids. I don't have a picture of my oldest kid graduating. Neither kid, I think, is going to be going to the prom. Could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong next year. One kid didn't go to football games. It's like...
What about students who graduated and never met any of their teachers?
Right. All of that is just... living is being in and engrossed in the experiences. And I think that I'm glad I'm doing this topic after the pandemic rather than before the pandemic, because I think people can grab onto this a whole lot more, because we really didn't realize how much we miss those experiences. Now, people might not want their commutes back in going to work, but I think people are sort of realizing, oh, I can do my job at home and I love that, but loneliness has gone through the roof. Like, people are feeling alone in all of this. Anxiety through the roof. Depression and substance abuse. Child abuse and neglect. I mean, all of these things have been through the roof. And I think a large part of that is because we haven't been living. Connecting between you and other people. It's part of like living. I didn't even have that on my pre-thought list. Learning about ourselves and learning about other people. Like living and learning. You've heard that expression. Mm-hmm. That's all really a part of what I think I mean in the mental health realm by living. A lot of it comes down to mindfulness, which we'll kick around in the next section. But there's a lot in this title of Stop Numbing and Start Living, right? Did you take all of that from the title?
No, I did not.
It's a lot.
Yep.
And when we're focused on all of the psychological aspects of this, I think a lot of that stuff, we don't realize we're dealing with it, but just in a natural way, we're dealing with all of it. So in a therapy experience, we kind of sometimes get, kind of picked right directly on that stuff so that we could be clear about, what it is that we're coping with, what it is that we're doing, how is this all working, how is our behavior in that. And this is how a lot of people can just live a lifetime of numbing out and never even know it. And consequently, they're kind of really not living their fullest life.
Well, I mean, if you don't want everything to be easy.
Yeah.
I mean, something you can relate to. If you have a video game that's too easy, what fun is that?
Gosh, that's so true. Go further with that. That's a great
Well, I
thought.
mean, if everything's so easy, there's no reward.
You cannot enjoy the ups if you don't have the downs.
If you watch a football game and they're blowing them out,
That's what makes it so passionate.
it's a close game the whole time and your team wins the end, you're like,
Yeah, right.
so, same thing.
It creates that emotion. It creates that experience. Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. As a matter of fact, I remember we was watching a football game one point. You're like, oh, they're never going to win. They're never going to lose this. You're fine. They're fine. Guess what happened? I think they actually did lose that game, did they? Or did they win it? You probably don't even remember.
Well, there was a baseball game we went to, and I was ready to go.
Oh, yes.
But the bases got loaded.
That's right.
And if the guy would have hit a home run, it'd been grand slam, been tied game.
Yes.
But he struck out, so it didn't happen.
But it could have.
It could have. And then I was ready to go.
Is it? You're ready to go. This dude never wants to stay for the whole sporting event. What's up with that? It's. Can we say that living is struggling with the anticipation, struggling with the discomfort, the internal emotional dysregulation, to use a clinical term, right? The being up and down emotionally. When you don't know what to expect, you're living. When it's predictable or easy. You're right. They purposely make video games that way, just to get people sucked in. It's very easy in the beginning to learn the skill. And then once you get a skill of a button or an angle or an option, and then they give you harder to hit that angle, harder to hit that button quickly enough, and your skill in the game gets more and more and more, and it's always just like one more thing that you got to do, one more thing that you have to master, one more angle that you have to think about, one more strategy piece that comes into play, and they build it.
Just like life.
It really is just like life. Video games as a mirror for living. Mindfulness. You know what mindfulness is,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Living in the present, and thus, about living, feeling the ups and downs for what they are. So here's a big point that came to my head, is that paying attention. So what we want to do, how do we use this is the question, right? So a big takeaway right at this point to think about when we're talking about stop numbing and start living, just pay attention. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on mindfulness, but if you think about it, to pay attention to, why am I striving towards the beer that I'm wanting to hit? Why am I striving towards the candy at the candy aisle after a day's worth of work, right? Those arguably could be destructive coping mechanisms. And you just ask the question, like, just instead of continuing to what you normally would do, hey, I just can't wait till I get home and I can watch 4 episodes of the Netflix thing I'm watching. I guess I should give some Hulu some love, right? Or, Amazon Prime. Yes, you like Prime.
Yeah, what's that new one? There's got new service.
Is there a new one? Paramount Plus.
I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of another one. There's another
Peacock.
one. That's the one I was
Peacock.
thinking. That's the one I was thinking of.
Oh my God, they got awesome country thing on there. That's where Yellowstone is on. Yes, yeah, 4 or 5 of them. Instead of like saying, God, I just can't wait to get home till I can just drop out of all this stuff and get there. Just stop before the candy bar, before the wine, and ask yourself this very, very simple question: what am I experiencing? I think people avoid, to the dickens, asking that simple question. Put that to the test. How many times have you asked yourself that or a similar kind of question in the last week or so?
No, I don't. No, but I think people are trying to get their reward just like you would, again, on a video game.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's a difference. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean,
I'll tell you what I think the difference
just
is.
during life, you have things you deal with, and then as things come out, I'll say good, not great, but as things come out good, you should get some kind of enjoyment out of that, just by experiencing it and things coming, and that should be the reward. But if you're numbing away from stuff and avoiding stuff, you're not getting that satisfaction of dealing with that, and maybe you're needing that candy bar, needing that beer.
I think you just laid it out. There's a difference between the reward for hitting the candy bar at the gas station on the way home versus I'm stressed out from work, and it's not a reward for getting through work. It's a coping. There's
Right.
Very big difference between those two. And we are talking about not I'm setting up a reward for myself. I'm going to give myself a 30-minute walk at the end of my day. That's my reward to unwind. I enjoy that. Like, we're talking about I don't want to go home. I don't want to have this conversation that I anticipate coming. So I'm going to go somewhere, anywhere. Right?
Man, Neil and I are both smiling, and we know exactly where this
Right?
is going.
So just ask that question instead. Stop and get into the, what am I experiencing? Get used to just maybe you get a little Post-it note and put it in your car just to get into a reminder. Simply to ask yourself that question. If you ask yourself that question and you're operating then from mindfulness, you'll be amazed at what you come up with.
Now, you talking about doing something like if there's something that you do that you really know it's not always the best thing for you to do, maybe ask yourself why you're doing that. Is that what you're saying?
In addition, that's a little bit more pattern. You might have a pattern of something that you're doing that way. Okay, great. And by the way, this isn't a show about how to change your behavior, but if you want to change your behavior, here's a little tip. Ask yourself what you're experiencing before you do that behavior. Deal with what you're experiencing. You might not have that behavior. So that's an extra piece. So it's just about being ingrained into I don't want to be destructive. I don't want to numb out. Let me go ahead. Give yourself permission. Let me just be in the moment of what it is that I'm experiencing. And I think you'll be amazed at what you find out, what you figure out, what you resolve, the self-esteem that builds, the confidence that builds. I really can handle my emotions. I think a lot of people don't know if they can or if they can't. Part of the reason why people avoid it. I think that's huge. I think that's huge. So going a little further with mindfulness, right? When we feel uneasy, we can begin to make a contract with ourselves, a challenge, if you will. Again, what is this feeling for, and what do I need to do about it? That's what we're talking about, even combining that with asking, what am I experiencing? So then it's, what is this feeling for, and what do I need to do about it? I'm all about action points, right? So I'm very curious if you think about cultural change, the fast pace that the world lives by. As I was thinking about this, how to change to get into living from the numbness. Do you know we don't have hardly any dead time in our day?
Oh, yes, I know.
Right? We used to. I noticed people in my lobby. When I started practicing, I would go out into the lobby with multiple clinicians at whatever company I was at in any given point. And you know what I would see is people just sitting there. Literally. Nothing. Just sitting there. You'd have the magazine racks. Remember when we actually used to have magazine racks in lobbies? I actually still have one, believe it or not. I don't think we have had a new magazine in there for a while, but people might grab the magazine. They might not. The vast majority of people in a doctor's office waiting room or a therapist's office waiting room were doing nothing.
But now it's on the phone.
It's always something. We have no spaces where we allow ourselves, maybe a commute in a car. But you know what I do in my commute from my car? I'm listening to podcasts. That's where I get my sports news. That's where I get my information. That's where I get the science that I'm interested in, right? We don't have any dead spaces, and my question is, sort of rhetorically, what's the effect of that? Have we actually stopped living as much as we used to live, given what we've talked about?
I think so.
We've stopped experiencing emotion, even though I guarantee you, as you said, we all have it all the time, and we all did back then, we all still do now. Are we literally walking around numbed out, unaware of what the heck it is that we're daggum experiencing?
Because we're not having downtime.
No downtime, no thoughtful time, no exploration of that, no conversation with other people about that. It's just boom, boom, boom. We're moving. We got to go. Too much going, something's got to be going on till we sleep. And then guess what happens with sleep? You don't get it. We got a lot of sleeplessness out there. I'm presenting a hypothesis with this thought that just popped in my head. I bet insomnia is way higher now than it used to be. I would bet.
Could be. Yeah, could be.
I would bet anything on that. I think I'd put my house on it. Maybe even my car and my house and my retirement program, which isn't much, but I do digress. Yeah, think about that. Think about that. Okay, so where are we at? Chapter of my book. I thought that was cool. There's actually 2 chapters, believe it or not, that I thought I'd highlight. Through a therapist's eyes, re-understanding emotions and becoming your best self. And I thought, wow, I talk about this concept a lot in my book, which is really about kind of, as it says, becoming your best self, like understanding what you're experiencing. So check this out. Chapter 16. I know you've already read it, Adam. Neil,
Yes.
I know you've
Over
got
and
this
over again.
memorized, right? This is all, he's like not even nodding.
That's why I'm not even looking at the.
You don't even need the notes.
No,
You got it. Chapter 16 of the book, Adam, would be? Title? Oh.
the value of working through life events is high.
Do be aware and move through life events. Don't forget life events and go forward blindly, right? So I thought those concepts were pretty neat because it's right on line with what it is that we're talking about. You know, living, working out, how do we manage life events? How do we experience what we're experiencing? And, you know, the value, understanding the value of this. And my quote there was like, the value's high. Okay, not the best quote that I had in the book, but, you know, that's hugely important for our emotional health. Without it, I don't think you can have it, honestly. So in the concepts in that particular chapter, I really talked about like the understanding the power in realizing when you have issues in your life. We all have them. We all like to make the joke, right? Oh, I got issues, man. You don't know issues. And it's true. We all have issues, right? Do we really understand how powerful they are in our life when they become unresolved? Now, I don't think we really get it. Like when we avoid things, when we numb things out, you know, yeah, you don't want to numb things because you numb the positive and the negative. But the second big piece there that I think I would add to Casey's list is this unresolved emotional stuff comes directly up in today's life when you're having conversations about a hot dog with your partner. And they're pissed off with you about something or whatever, you get into something. Those unresolved issues, those unresolved emotions, those unresolved experiences, that unresolved psychological stuckness that's there just has a nasty habit of popping its head out when you don't want it to. So can we really understand that? You follow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I don't think people
everybody
get it.
you meet is dealing with something
Right.
that you know nothing about.
And you can't read their mind. You know,
And even if they tell you, you still don't understand it.
you can't get it. Yeah.
Even if you've been through something similar, it's not the same thing.
You are so on point. And so you got to understand within yourself, with what we just talked about with living, gosh, like the emotional freedom is another term. The emotional freeing reality of being able to allow what you emotionally experience to come to the surface. Like, wow, if I could just say that sentence again. That would be golden for the human emotional experience if we can really get into developing that ability. I don't know how many people really have that ability. Healthy people really do. People that are really secure, people that are really confident, people that are really comfortable in their own skin, people that really seem grounded. I could go on. I think they do a lot of this. I think they really engage this so much and realize there's not a lot of unresolved feelings and emotions. Now, what do I mean by unresolved? I've got a perfect metaphor that I've developed over the years, right? So if you know what a litmus test is?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Very few people know what a litmus test is. What is a litmus test?
It's a test you do with paper.
Right?
And, yeah, to check like like pH or something like that.
Right. Checking chemical compounds in water or solutions, and you dip the litmus test in, and it comes out.
I had a fish aquarium, man. Come on.
Yes, and you're an engineer, you know. So my litmus test for resolved emotions is this, right? It's unresolved if you have the same amount of emotion now in intensity level as when something just happened. Obviously, that's like it's still there and it's still the same intensity. But equally unresolved if you have little to no connection today now than when something just happened, right? That means it's unresolved also. You can understand that a resolved emotion comes when you have the level of emotion intensity when something just happens, and then as time goes on and as you're thinking about it, talking about it, journaling about it, working about it, whatever, in a natural way, you gradually experience that intensity level decreasing as you go through the days, weeks, months, and years, to where now I have the same emotions. It never really goes away, but it's just so much less intense than when it first experienced. That's my litmus test for what is a resolved emotion, right? Do you ever think of it that way?
So you're saying something that you used to bother you doesn't bother you as much now? That's your test?
As much.
Well, yeah, as much.
It's still there. When you grieve, mom dies, whatever, you know, you don't just shut it down, a couple of months after, 3 months after, and I feel that no more. That's now a year or 2 or 3 later, I don't really feel anything about that. That's unresolved. You're going to feel sad when you think of your mom who's not here, even if you didn't have a good relationship with her. You're going to feel feelings, and they're the same feelings as when it first happened. It's just been gradually decreased over time. That's what we try to do in therapy. That's what we're really trying to work with emotional health. So that's resolved emotions. That's really what we're after.
But sometimes it may not actually be better. And I'm going to try to reference show we did 2 or 3 shows back.
Okay.
You were mentioning about kids at a funeral.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And
right?
as time goes
on.
on.
We were talking about grief and loss. Yeah.
Right. I was just talking about, as time goes on, you take those with you. You take those emotions to the next funeral.
Okay, yes, the stacking effect that happens.
So even though it might be a resolved emotion, doesn't mean it's gone away. It's just you're dealing with it better.
Yeah, I like to think about this as energy. You have emotional energy. When your energy is high, you're really feeling intensely happy about something or intensely sad about something. That intensity level is what we're really looking at. Later on, the intensity level is just a whole lot less. It's a whole lot less intensely sad. It's a whole lot less intensely fearful because you worked through it. That's the gauge that we're trying to use. And it is an interesting point that whatever energy it remains does come back up. But I'd rather have it come back up when it's resolved, when I've worked through it a lot and it's a whole lot less intense than when it comes back up and it's freaking intense inferno that's like freaking me out in a new situation. That's kind of the point there. Craig's thought actually made it into my book. I didn't know this. Shout out to Craig, my the co-host from before. He made the point that it may take 5 years to recover from a divorce. I think he did some research. He's always researching stuff and finding cool facts. And I thought that's really actually very true, right? So his thought demonstrates that we're not talking about a short-term process here. We're talking about gradually decreasing the emotional experience. Quote from the book, "I find that the most dangerous emotional matters that detract from our emotional health are those that we're not even aware are there." Right? Say that again. I find that the most dangerous emotional matters that detract from our emotional health are those that are not even aware that they're there. And that's all about numbing. If you're just numbing out and avoiding emotion, I guarantee you the emotional stuff is still there. And I guarantee you also, Lou, that it's just destroying your ability to engage in current life. With trauma, with big things like that, that's a big impact. And that's where the value of therapy can really come into. So I thought that was cool, chapter 16. But I also thought chapter 26 was pretty cool. So check this out. The chapter is entitled "Life is One Big Learning Event with Many Opportunities to Learn." I think that's totally true. Not many people can argue with that. Do remain open to things around you. Don't close yourself off and remain dogmatic. So do you know what dogmatic really kind of means? That's a weird word, right? We tend to lose the open-mindedness that leads to growth. You're just stuck in a rut. You're just sort of in a pattern, same thing, day after day after day. You know, the drab and drudge of a routine, all right?
That you're not enjoying.
That you're not enjoying.
That
Go
you're
ahead
not-
with your
yeah.
pattern. What's
No,
good about
no,
patterns?
I mean, if it's something, if you're doing something you enjoy, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But if you're-
Routines.
But if you're just doing a routine that's just because you're kind of numbing out, as your episode is.
I like that you just brought that up because I've always thought, people kill routines, in talk like that. And I'm glad you caught that because I usually am the guy that did what you did. Like, routines are fine. We do the same thing every day because it works. Like, you brush our teeth and then we do this and then we do that. We have our routines and that's good.
As long as it works and you're enjoying it.
Exactly. That is the qualifier. I totally am down with that.
Same thing with working out.
Correct. What do you mean?
I'm going to say, air quote, routine. Because if you're doing a routine, after a while it doesn't work anymore because you're doing the exact same thing.
Okay.
So as long as it's working, it's fine. But if it doesn't work, you need to do something else.
Switch it up.
Yep. Just
Live
like working out.
and let live is another expression they say in the 12-step program. So you want to, let other people do what they're doing, but you do what you're doing and you switch it up and you learn. That's a nice transition. Because that's something else I talked about in this chapter, right? Is it not quite possibly an answer to the age-old question, what's the purpose of life? Why are we here anyway? What is this really all about? I'm supposed to you that maybe it's about learning. Do we not want to learn? Do we ever want to stop learning? Another reason why we want to say, be careful about numbing out and live instead, because you stop learning. You stop growing. You get stuck. And so if you're stuck, by the way, we've done an episode on that before. You take that in the opposite fashion. Maybe you end up allowing your emotion and really paying attention, asking yourself that question, what am I experiencing? What am I feeling? How is this operating right now for me? That gets you unstuck probably more times than not, if not 100% of the time. So that's just a thought. Another quote from the book I said in chapter 26, life is one big learning event with many opportunities to learn, quote unquote. Openness doesn't mean you have no control over things around you or the decisions you need to make, unquote. And I was thinking about this topic and I was glad to pull that out. To me, I think why I wrote that and part of what my purpose was in that chapter was to really highlight is dealing with your emotions scary?
Can be.
Can it not also be so super rewarding?
Yes.
That even though
Yes.
it's uncomfortable, right, you don't lose control. I can't tell you how many times in therapy people in part will shut things down and not want to engage in trauma recovery of memory or whatever because they feel like, what, dude, so many people have literally said this to me. You don't understand, Chris. If I start to talk about this, I won't be able to stop crying. I won't be able to stop. And it'll take me down this crevasse, this
Sometimes
ravine
that's what they need, though.
to my death, huh?
Sometimes that's what people need
To
get past something.
I think almost always, yeah. I'm
gonna use that. I used it a long time ago about songs that get stuck in your head. Do you remember me telling about that?
I don't.
Okay, so everybody gets this song. Okay, "Achy Breaky Heart." You've heard it.
Oh my God, I
Okay.
hate that song.
Okay, you hate that song. So
Terrible.
let's say you're going down the road and you hear "Achy Breaky Heart."
Yes.
Okay, or any song that gets on your nerves because you heard it so many times.
People around the world now are going to be singing "Achy Breaky Heart."
But it's been so long ago now. People are probably googling.
Yeah,
now to say,
that's true.
What song is that? But say you get some song in your head that you just want to get out of your head. The thing is, you need to finish it in your head to get it out of your head. Same things, emotions. You need to get them. You need to work through it, get through it to get it out of your head. And like,
Is that a psychological fact? If you sang the whole song, because
it does. It
I
does work.
only know the
It
refrain.
It does work.
That's awesome.
Get a song. Next time a song, you think, oh man,
Can't get it out of my head.
Go through the song, start to finish, best you can.
And it's
Humans
gone.
want to finish things. As soon as you finish it, it's not a big deal.
I
Try
can
it.
totally see that.
Try it. Same thing, emotions.
I think that's fascinating actually, because we're programmed to want to have that level
Closure.
of control, and closure is really important. Yeah, no, that's awesome. To those of you that hear this though and can identify with, I don't want to deal with this because it's going to be too much and I'm not going to be able to stop feeling all of this. I would tell you, you've literally spent 30, 40, 50, sometimes even more years than that suppressing this and controlling this, that when you allow it to come to the surface, you are still very much empowered to do that again, to control it, to suppress it again.
Right.
And you exercise your skill and ability and your emotional muscle to bring it up for a moment, put it back down. Let it come to the surface again, put it back down. And you might be amazed at how much that little itty bitty break in emotional energy that you afford yourself from constantly holding it down, whether you know you're doing that or not, even when trauma has been repressed and you don't remember it. The fact of the matter is you've been spending so much emotional energy and nothing's left over for parenting. Nothing's left over for your spouse. Or nothing's left over to excel into new stages of learning and anxiety with career and change. It's all, not all, it's vastly spent on keeping things down, keeping things suppressed. And man, I've had so many people in therapy have gone like, it's amazing to watch people allow this stuff to come up. And then, you ever hear the weight off your shoulders? Get things off my chest. They'll sometimes come in after a few sessions even and just like, God, I feel so much less anxious. Like, this is weird. Like, I didn't know that I could relax like that. Right? I hear these kind of things, and I want more and more people to experience that.
Chris is going to use that thing about the song next.
Oh, I'm totally going to do that. I'm going to go listen to the song on the way home.
No, I mean, and there's going to be a session, and somebody's like scared to. You ever hear a song?
Oh, I'm going to use the metaphor.
Yeah.
I have to test it to make sure it's true first. No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure that it is. I have to Google and see if there's like psychological studies to that or something, man. Anyway, it's super cool. I think
I'd be willing to bet there is.
Should we do a $5 on it? Oops, now I dropped my sheet.
Neil's on it. Neil's doing research right now.
Oh, he is. There you go, Neil. Yes, awesome. Pop it a Google quote or search and see what we got.
I wonder if he's Googling how to get a song out of your head.
So I guess the last segment that we'll do here is just an article that I thought was kind of cool that I kind of checked myself with, and they came up with how all these articles are 8 steps to stop numbing your emotions. I thought I swear if I ever get cajoled into writing like a column or something and I start writing titles like that, Neil, I want you to throat punch me. I'm telling you that right now. I hate those, but they're so catchy. People love them. There's a reason why they do it. So here's the 8. Name the feeling, carve out time to feel, accept that experiences may be confusing, acknowledge that your feelings are worthy, notice if you're taking on other people's feelings, get curious about your feelings, talk about your feelings, and then learn to trust your feelings and yourself. So I thought it would be cool to hit down through those. Actually, we may have spent a little bit of time on them, but let's hit them and give me your comment or thoughts about it. Name the feeling. Does that sound weird?
It does sound weird.
Yeah?
Because you might not realize what feeling it is.
I can't tell you how many times, oddly enough, people in my therapy experience respond to me all the time. I have no idea what I'm feeling. None. And what's funny about this, I remember being in a conference, and The guy made fun of therapists, right? He's like, pulls out this sheet that we all had in the audience, and it's this, you may have seen it. Now it's emojis, so it was way before emojis came out. I think emojis got started from actually these psychological sheets that would have like all these faces and would have different facial expressions and would try to have the labeled emotion on each one of them. And he's like, throw that dang thing away, man. Get rid of it. Forget about it. Because people are sitting there trying to figure out if I'm happy, mad, sad, or glad. That's it. That's what people's level of understanding in what their emotion is. So yeah, when you practice this whole thing about trying to name the feeling, yeah, you're right? Are people going to struggle that badly with it?
I think that's going to be the most difficult of this list.
Do you really?
Yes.
Of all of them?
Yeah.
Carve out time, accept the experience.
You can't do any of that until you do the first one.
Talk about your feelings. Yeah, definitely. You know what? You're absolutely right. I don't know. I don't really understand. I'm gonna.
Well, okay.
I'm gonna do a little bit of a.
Ever had this? Somebody comes in, they're depressed.
Yeah.
What are you depressed for? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, name your feeling. Saying depressed. That's not it. That's just the top part of it.
So
In my
I
opinion.
suck at drawing. I can't draw for crap. I mean, it's like pathetic. I'm like stick figure. It's kind of bad. And I'll never forget having a conversation with an art therapist. And she's like, "Oh yeah, of course. Most people suck at drawing." And she said, "You want to know why that is? Now you're pretty good at drawing. You do that pretty well. But when's the last? I'll test this out. When's the last time you sat down for 20 minutes and drew?"
It's been a while.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure I've got you beat. Weeks, months, or years?
When you say draw, I mean like draw something because I needed to, or draw something.
Either.
Well, art-wise, years.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 7 or 8 years.
Dude, I was 12. Right. Now I'm making up a number a little bit. But this art therapist made the point that, like, look, most people are on the level of drawing at the point at which they stopped. And for me, that was art class. I didn't have any art classes in high school. I didn't have any art classes in junior high, is what we called it, now middle school. I don't think. Maybe 6th grade, we had this art teacher that I kind of remember, and we did some things. Dude, I'm almost 50 years old. It's been almost 40 years ago that I tried to really draw. So, of course, my level of skill is actually going to be on that level where I stopped doing it. So I ask you, when did you start asking yourself the question, what am I feeling? Because you might have the ability to answer that question on that level of where you started. Maybe your question is, did you ever start to ask yourself that simple question? And so I think you're dead on right. I think a lot of people really never really trained themselves, learned how it was to be involved in that question for themselves. Be involved in that for yourself is my point, right? Like, take the time. I think that's this author spins out a few of them.
Carve time out.
Yeah.
Or carve out time.
And then talk about them. Carve time out to do that. Accept that the experience is maybe confusing. Boy, actually, if we really analyze this that they came up with, a lot of it relates to what you said. You can't do any of those. All of those things are actually wrapped around this idea, and I think we talked about it in our conversation earlier, right? That, to have emotional freedom, to be able to live, you have to really spend that mindfulness time. Ask yourself before you go to what you do to cope, which is a candy bar or a beer or 10 beers, right? What am I experiencing, right? And that's where they landed on. I love how they said get curious about your feelings. Are there many things you get curious about?
Yes,
Right?
unfortunately.
I'm curious about black holes.
Yes.
I think they're fascinating. I was, what was it I was stupidly curious about the other day? I'm not going to pull it back quickly enough, but I'll just sit there like, how does this pen work? Like,
I go over deep end on stuff. I just gotta know.
go over what?
I go over the deep end on stuff.
Yeah.
I have to. You know me.
I know you do.
Like I'll get interested in something. I have to know everything about that particular thing.
Right.
And it's kind of annoying sometimes for me too.
It would be. It would be. So you can go too far with it, but so you really understand the idea of what happens when you get curious.
Mm-hmm.
You go all into it. And so that's what's cool about this. Like, get curious about your feelings, get curious about your emotions, get curious about your psychology, because you're going to know, you almost like create a compulsion, to dive into that. Don't you want to understand yourself?
It's like school. The classes in school that anybody's best at is the ones they were curious about.
Oh yeah. Mine was science. I just
Me too.
loved the science class.
And math.
Oh God, how did you get curious about math?
Well, everything
That's
works.
tough.
Everything works on math.
Yeah, formulas and stuff.
Yeah,
Though,
everything
man,
works on math.
I can't stand that junk. That shit will drive you crazy. But that's to each his own. Live and let live, right? So, yeah, I don't know. And then it goes to a natural follow up talk about your feelings and all that goes on with things. I mean, Mr. Rogers came up. Casey did a current event last time. Hope people that are still experiencing the effects of that terrible earthquake, by the way, when the show comes out, that's probably been largely known. I mean, it was a terrible earthquake in where did she say that was? I forget. Afghanistan, that's right. Yeah, and boy, when you. Oh, so the quote was Mr. Rogers, and he said, look for the helpers. It was a cool quote. And when you really think about you remember Mr. Rogers?
Mm-hmm.
He was before his time, man. I didn't realize how much he was talking about this. He was talking about your happy feelings and what you do with them, and your mad feelings and how that makes you behave, and and it was just it was so refreshing teaching children that it's okay to figure out what you're feeling, identify your feeling. He put names on it for people, and then helped people move through and live with the way that they're feeling. And I would submit to you that that's living. Way, way cooler than numbing out and living a pretty unemotional life, I would submit. Does that sound fair?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's an abrupt end. I think that's a perfect ending. Guys, I hope you had, I guess I will say, a happy 4th of July for us at recording time that's coming up. And those around the world with your various Independence Days, I hope you celebrate them and everyone does so safely. So take care, and we will see you guys next week.